What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 75 of Valley Town. I'm ChanManV, and excuse me, gosh, I don't know what happened there. We've got the full crew back. Got Noxious, Reynad, and myself, and we've got a special guest today, Mr. Yagut. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks you for having me.
Yeah. Been a huge fan of your decks and just your play for a long time. I watch your stream actually quite a bit too, so really excited to get a chance to talk specifically about the Rogue class today, because we're going to be taking a look at that like we did last week with Priest. So yeah, definitely excited about that, man. So right. We'll also be talking about some of the news, guys. Just there was some things that popped up recently, just with Hearthlytics disbanding and some news with Orange leaving Archon. So I figured we touched a little bit on that because there was some discussion just kind of revolving. It's like a little bit of just Hearthstone esport teams versus, I guess, having teams of names with lesser known names, and just how, whether that's even viable or not. So I figured we should just have that discussion with Ray here. And we have a couple other people that are just going to be joining us via audio for the segments. But yeah, overall, guys, how's your week been? Noxious, how's what you been doing Hearthstone wise?
Honestly, I played a lot of goofy decks. I mean, I explored the old school, Malagos Druid. I tried some interesting rogue. Like, there's a lot of rogue builds I feel that haven't been touched too much, because everybody's been so focused around Miracle Rogue. Yeah. And it's nice to see that some people are going back to experimenting. Like, I'm seeing more and more of the, you see like people trying some kind of tempo rogue. You see dragon rogue coming back. Like, there's a lot of rogue stuff coming back, and that's kind of what I've been working on as well. For fun.
No, there's lots of cool stuff going on with the Rogue. That's kind of why I thought it'd be great to do a Rogue episode this week. Ray, how about you, man? What you been up to Hearthstone wise, or just generally? Oh, can't hear you, man. You're muted.
Yeah, still muted.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, cool. Yeah, I've been good. I had a bunch of events kind of back to back, so it kind of made me slow down on finishing work. So since I've been back, I've been trying to catch up on all of that, and there was a lot of esports stuff outside of Hearthstone happening with the League of Legends spots that went up for sale, plus all the Counter-Strike stuff that happened. So I was kind of working a lot for during all of that, and just didn't get a chance to stream much or play the game much. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Hearthstone. Tempo Storm LCS?
I mean, not this split, obviously.
Okay.
In the future, hopefully.
That'd be obviously huge news. That'd be really, really cool. And Mr. Yagut, how about you, man? This week, what you been playing on your stream?
Mostly it was Hunter and Rogue, I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the end of the season, I played some Shaman, Face Shaman. A lot of people will hate me for that, I guess.
You're dirty. Yeah.
So finished kind of high with it as well, but yeah, mostly I was playing a Hunter with Doomsays and a lot of Rogue.
What was your end of season rank?
I finished number 4 in A and number 10 EU.
Okay, all right, nice.
That's
man.
Pretty good.
Got a good number of points. That's always awesome. Of course, Face Shaman. That's what people tend to always do at the very end of the season, just to get a few more points, it feels like. All right, well, why don't we kick things off, talk a little bit about the news. Again, like I mentioned before, Hearthlytics announced that actually sometime last week, they decided to disband. And RJ Epperson, the owner, released a statement talking about it. And I figured it'd be nice to have RJ to come on and really just talk with us, just give us a little bit of a... just I guess why the decision was made, maybe just his look or outlook on just how Hearthstone, being a team owner in Hearthstone is, and maybe a discussion with Ray too. Obviously Ray's a team owner too, and just kind of seeing what some of the challenges are. So I want to welcome to the show RJ Epperson. Hey RJ, how's it going, man?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, man. Well, thanks for taking the time and joining us, here on Valley Town. But I'm definitely sorry to hear that the team is disbanding, because it was great seeing you guys at DreamHack, and watching you guys just rooting for each other, Frozen getting pretty far. So yeah, I'm sorry about that news.
That's all right.
So yeah, I just kind of wanted to have you on and just maybe talk a little bit about, you did mention in the, your release, the message or the whole statement that you released, just some of the challenges you had, and wanted to, kind of, ask you some of those and maybe have you give us some just just a little bit more details as to what Hearthstone or what challenges Hearthstone poses, because it sounds like you're still looking to possibly be a team owner in another game. Is that correct?
Yeah. As it stands, we just stopped doing Hearthstone because we took a strategy that was different from that of what most of the teams that are seeing success doing, like Tempo Storm and Archon, recruiting players who are, can be a sustainable household name, and they have streams and they provide viewership numbers and stuff like that. We recruited really just people who didn't, who weren't known to the scene, other than maybe Jab. And their streams weren't that big, and we really banked on the prospect of them winning big or performing well or just growing their stream. And it came down to a lot of times that we were struggling getting the players to do sponsorship activities and things that we were wanting to pay them to do. And we just failed to get them incentivized properly. And part of the incentivization process is we need to figure out what our return is to incentivize them. Like, what's our return on paying them? And the return just didn't meet what the investment cost asked for. So we didn't see long-term potential in that model. So we, stopped doing it.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
So, I mean, for those of you not familiar, I guess, with how teams make money just in this space or just in the esports space, a lot of it comes from sponsorships. So, like big organizations sponsoring teams, and that's kind of what he's alluding to. So, sponsors, they have certain, requirements that they need in terms of impressions or views and that sort of thing. And that's kind of where streaming comes into place. Reynad, you could probably talk some on that too. I mean, for Tempo Storm, the main source of revenue is sponsorships, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's close, but yeah, overall, yeah, for most teams, it's like all of the revenue. So, sponsorship activations, you basically, I mean, I can go on and on this subject. I guess I'm gonna need specific questions, but yeah, that's how it works basically.
So I guess if we're talking about, I guess, just esports, especially in Hearthstone specifically, and we're comparing it to, say, let's just say traditional sports, right? I guess, RJ, your approach to trying to get, I guess, the best players and just have them just be the best at the game that they're playing, and trying to, I guess, create success in that fashion, or just at least exposure and notoriety and that sort of thing. Is it impossible in Hearthstone for us to be in that position? I guess, I know Reynad's probably talked about this a little bit, but is it impossible just to have players focus on being good at the game and having teams somehow building a brand from that, like a brand strong enough that sponsors will, be able to get value from that? Because that's kind of what we see with the other teams right now, like in traditional sports.
In Hearthstone alone, I don't think so. But if you have other games to leverage in terms of income and revenue sources, a lot of companies, esports teams, just touch Hearthstone because it's a good advertising platform. It's a good market to touch. There's a lot of money flying around, and it all sits at the top. It's just like the wealth distribution in any country. The more money is at the top, then the middle class can even handle. So it's just in Hearthstone, the results are too inconsistent in being good at the game. We didn't know this going in, but I had an inkling that might be the case. But we wanted to try a model out, and it wasn't successful. So we just kind of found that out.
Ray, what are your
in
thoughts?
my opinion, I don't. Sorry. I was just gonna say, in my opinion, clearly, I don't think it's possible.
Okay.
All right, makes sense.
Yeah. Ray, what about you? What do you think?
I think it's ridiculously ignorant to have the question start with compared to real sports. Why are you comparing an iPad game based on World of Warcraft to real sports? Like why just because people use esports when talking about shit on Twitch does not mean that everything is supposed to follow this NFL model.
Right.
Hearthstone is a lot more similar to poker and Magic, and you have groups of friends testing together in Magic, and you have groups of friends all having a piece of each other in poker tournaments, but you don't have teams. You just have certain organizations that stand to profit from marketing in the poker space, like Poker Stars, for example, that will sign individual players based on exposure. So
I guess it's really, I guess, getting a clarification on what team means in Hearthstone.
That's exactly right, man.
Right,
this is the thing this is my number one thing that tilts the shit out of me. You have no idea when it comes to the business side of Hearthstone. The number one thing in the business side of Hearthstone. There's a bunch of people that like to watch Twitch and they like to follow video games and they want to do something more with it. They have some money they can put together. They find a friend of theirs that they want to make a business partner and they're like, okay, let's make a business. And then they think, okay, well, what kind of business do we do? And they think of the sexy stuff that they see when they watch Twitch, which is teams. Teams get a lot of exposure in other video games. When you like think Hearthstone, you think Tempo or Archon or whatever. When you think like Counter-Strike, you think Luminosity or Fnatic or Cloud9. It's like, so what I'm saying is everyone goes into this trying to be a team owner for no fucking reason. And it's just because they don't know what else to do as far as starting a business in the space, even though being intimately familiar with the finances of every single branch of this industry, being a team owner is the far and away the stupidest thing you could do going into it. It is. Okay. It's not only the hardest thing to build with the lowest profit margins, but it's like it's the most competitive on top of that because of so many teams like that. It's massive land grab for players. It takes such a robust staff to even leverage players that you sign, if you can even sign the best talent. And then it as a business, it's so multifaceted, and there's so many different areas where you can fuck up, where you're just bleeding money because of it, that it's really tough to make this engine that's flowing smoothly and generating revenue. And that's true for any game. And the fact that people do it in Hearthstone of all games is so ridiculous for me. If any team comes into Hearthstone as the first space they approach, and the reason they do it is because the market value of players is very cheap, You're not going to start with Counter-Strike if you and a buddy want to start a team, because you can't afford to play 6 people $10K plus a month for a world-class team. But in Hearthstone, it's most players are unsponsored. Anybody, there's 1,000 players with good results that they can put on a resume, and then you'll pay them a couple $100 a month because it's whatever, and then there you go, you have a team, you're a business owner. But obviously it's not going to have any return, because if I'm a sponsor and I want to market to the Hearthstone fan base, where am I going to go to? Am I going to go to lower level players that haven't proven themselves yet, or am I going to go to not just teams but individuals that have these massive numbers that I can quantify? I know what I'm paying for. I know what return I'm getting. So yeah, well,
So, the reason I brought up sports, even though you think it's ignorant, is that, the sponsors for sports teams or for the NFL, or, just depending on which one you're talking about, it has a lot to do with just the team, right? The team organization and the brand, and, where they can put, or
not just
how the general public, values that team or the brand. No? You don't know?
Not at all how it works.
Okay.
No. That kind of brand awareness translates into merch sales. The big money is like in basketball, for example, the money coming in is not from sponsors to teams and then teams pay the players. That's not the business model. The money comes from individual big brands that Nike or Under Armour or whoever will go to and pay hundreds of millions of fucking dollars and have them promote their shoe for 10 years. That's where the money goes. And that dwarfs the salaries from teams by like tenfold. It's not even comparable. Like the individual players build a brand because if I'm a kid, I'm not going to cheer for a corporation. I'll cheer for my state and I'll cheer for this team because it represents my state. But the guy I'm going to look up to is like, whatever, the Michael Jordan of the game. And that's the guy that I'm going to trust to tell me what shoes are best. So that's what the sponsors will target.
Okay, so the teams basically are a function of just whatever the competitive structure is.
Exactly.
Right.
The competitive structure is what makes teams make money, right? If there's an actual league where you have equity and you basically have this asset, you have this team in this league, you have a franchised spot, then you make your money off of a portion of revenue from broadcasting rights that you sell.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically the model there.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, getting back to you, RJ. I mean, you're talking about maybe getting into other esports. Like, what other games are you thinking about?
We have no idea.
Oh, just no idea. Okay, just really, I guess analyzing it. I guess at this.
Yeah,
point.
I mean, I have some options, but it's not anything we're moving on yet. I'm kind of just taking a break stepping back, trying to figure out what we're doing because it's just the space is. Originally, we went into Hearthlytics with a product in mind because most of the teams have products to back up just the team because the team is not a product itself, not a good one anyway.
So when you say product, are you talking about like a website that has a lot of content, or
it's a service actually? It was a program.
Oh, it's a service.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
It was a program that we developed ourselves.
Right.
Put a lot of time and money into it. Yeah, and it was a data-oriented product, but we haven't launched it, and it's not ready. So, still might do that as an individual business, but not doing the esports surrounding it anymore, just because Hearthstone. But
okay. For a lot of the players that were on your team, I mean, you guys did make a really deep run in last year's championship. I mean, you had two representatives in the finals, which is, not the finals, the grand finals, but just on the at BlizzCon, which was really impressive actually as a team. Kind of. That's not impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's not that impressive. Nah, it's Hearthstone, man. Anyone can get there. Wow. Anyone can get there.
Okay.
If they play well enough and they run well, they're gonna get there.
Yeah,
I'm telling you right
about
now.
that quite a bit, I think, on the show.
Actually, Yagut, what do you think about that statement? Like anybody can get there? Like, as a player, what do you think? Oh, can't hear you, buddy.
I'm not here.
I can't hear him.
No, he's muted.
Oh no, he's talking. Well, I guess we're gonna have to figure out the audio there. I don't know what's going on with this audio. Ray, well, I think I know your feelings on it. Do you think Hearthstone is? It is in that kind of state where literally one of 100 people could be there, or?
Well, it's much more than 100.
More than 100.
It doesn't mean it's random. That's still like probably only like 500 people out of the 40 million that have an account for the game could do it. But that's still a lot. You're gonna get a mostly new top 16 most of the time.
Right.
When we talk more about like the rebuttal articles and stuff like that, I want to go because I don't fully agree with
what I just said
that either. But
okay.
I'll save it for later, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, RJ, thanks for definitely hopping on and spending the time and at least talking with us or discussing just the Hearthlytics thing with us, and definitely wish you luck with any other endeavors you have, particularly in esports. If you get into another game, that would be really, really cool to see you do well.
Yeah, I think making a product's like really smart way to go. Yep. Literally anything that's not being a team owner, like any other branch, is actually a lot of money to be made in esports.
Yeah, a lot of our intention was settled in the fact that I wanted to get to know the space better also from a product standpoint, like a product marketing standpoint. Just learning more about the scene from inside is probably the best way to do it. So that's another reason we just, did this.
Well, all right, man.
Thanks, man.
Talk to you later.
Appreciate it.
Bye. All right, cool. So trying to figure out if okay, so Mr. Yagut, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay. Gosh,
Am I
Great.
working?
yeah, good.
Okay.
Well, actually, I just want to get your thoughts. I mean, because I'm not sure if you heard or not. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the whole statement that making it, I guess, to top 8 of BlizzCon isn't necessarily that impressive because a lot of people can do that.
No, I don't think everyone can do it. Like, it's not so easy. It mostly comes down to deck building, and it makes a huge difference if you put like 1 card or 2 cards difference into your deck. Like,
Right.
for example, if you put Harrison, if you put situational cards, and it comes down to the meta basically. And if you find out what the meta is, then you have a better chance to come to the top 8.
Sure. Like
Okay,
I couldn't
yeah.
do it, but like if, for instance, if you go for like, as Reynad mentioned, say let's say 500 people who have a very similar skill level, of all these guys, it like if you had to pick 8, would it matter who you picked, or would these 500 top level players all have an equal chance if you just pit them against one another with their ability to read the metagame? Like that's kind of what we're getting at.
It wouldn't be
That
an equal
1 of
chance.
40 million, right? Because that's obviously exaggerated. But like, if you take this small pool of high level players, would you put them all kind of on the same odds of getting there?
I mean, it's not an equal chance.
Sure,
But
it's
that,
not.
that
Some
doesn't
players
mean-
are better.
Yeah, it's
it's
just-
Right.
It's the
obviously.
difference between having like a 0.5% chance
Right.
if you're like the bad one, and if you're one of the best in that pool of 500, you have like a 0.7 chance,
Yeah.
Right.
which is still like 40% higher odds, but it's still shitty odd.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on and let's have Nidra come on the show too. Kind of wanted to talk a little bit about just continue talking about just having these lesser known players and just how that works in the Hearthstone community, as well as some news with the Orange leaving Archon and kind of what that means with Archon. So let me welcome to the show Nidra, who is, for a lot of people that are in the Hearthstone community know who he is, but he's a journalist writer for GhostofGamers.net, and he's been so since the beta, or even before that. I think Nidra wrote for even StarCraft 2. I think he did StarCraft 2 for a while too. Nidra, welcome to the show. Nidra.
Nidra's dead.
Nidra's dead. Okay,
Yeah, we seem to have a lot of either mic problems or just AFK issues. I think Nidra maybe went for a break.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Anyways, we'll have to talk to him a little. Let's talk a little bit about just the articles, I guess, leading into it before we
Sure.
hop on.
Go
So,
ahead. Yes.
so Splice Shavek is a writer or wrote an opinion piece on Slice.gg that basically talked about just the general, I guess, team environment and just esports environment of esports. And this is all his opinion, of course. And it was all pertaining to just the Hearthlytics news, as well as Orange leaving Archon and this presumption that Archon's getting away from esports altogether. And he was, basically trying to, at least his opinion of it was that a couple things, that the Hearthstone Championship Tour is not structured properly to I guess help with storylines for these lesser known players, and some of the fault of casters and production, I guess, involved. Another thing was also that I guess journalists, I guess, aren't I guess highlighting them enough as well, and basically pointing, I wouldn't say pointing the finger at the community or anything like that, but basically he doesn't know how we actually get these lesser known names to the forefront, and there has to be a way to do it, so we obviously aren't doing it well enough. So that was kind of like his opinion, like that was his piece, and really trying to figure out like how can we improve this and that sort of thing. And Nigel wrote a rebuttal to that, but I kind of want to talk about the original one first, which was the Slice. Like, what do you guys think of that piece? Did you agree with a lot of things in that piece, or did you think it was just wrong altogether?
Right. Well, I think one of the big mistakes that the writer made is the assumption that it's completely on the shoulder of the community to make a player known, right? And it's not up to the player himself to kind of push himself in that spot. You see a lot of players who are very good at the game who just have no interest whatsoever on producing content, streaming. Like there was a mention about some players refusing to do sponsorship activities, right? Well, that's kind of it. Like if some players are willing to do that, then is it our fault that they're not known? There will be the occasional outlier. Well, they'll simply get popular out of seemingly nowhere, but they still have to get out there or be seen, even though they're skilled. Like a lot of players are skilled, but you don't hear about them nearly as much as quote unquote they deserve to. But like, is it the community's fault if the player doesn't put himself out? I don't know. It just seems so odd. Like that approach sounds a little odd. It's like everybody owes him popularity.
Right.
I don't know.
Ray, your thoughts?
Seemed like somebody was salty that they paid for some players and then they didn't get as much recognition as they hoped they would. That article was very frustrating to read in a lot of ways, and I agree with a lot of the things in like Nidra's rebuttal about it. But yeah, it's the thing about Hearthstone is it actually has probably the most successful individuals. I can't think of a better game for making individuals known than Hearthstone. You see that in guys like Crip and Trump that just stream from their home and get higher viewership than most tournaments and other games. Maz's stream is big, my stream is big, Forson's stream's big, and these are all streamers I'm mentioning, but there's big YouTubers as well. Trollden, like anybody that's actually been willing to work for like 12 hours a day, and Yagut's a great example too. You put so many hours into making content, and so does Noxious. Like all of us do. ChanMan, right now you're making content. Mm-hmm. You know why we're known is because we actually put the work in. And would I prefer to be paid just as much to just like sit on my ass and play a fun game all day? Yeah, that would be fantastic. But the reality of the situation is, no, you have to do boring shit like get heckled by 12-year-olds for 8 hours at a time, or grind a lot of hours into video editing, testing different kinds of content and seeing what works. Like, no, you're not going to sit on your fucking ass like an entitled douchebag and get paid money because you're better than these streamers at the game. Well, no shit, you're better. It's because you're sitting on your ass playing a video game for 12 hours a day. You're not actually contributing or giving anything back. It's like, do you think the community cares which player wins out of 8? Kind of. They care if the player they follow wins. But, it's not like a lot of players in the early days of Hearthstone, they would, like, win a tournament and then feel like they contributed something to the community. It's like, not really. The guy that made the tournament did, right? Because he gave people something to watch. Right. But somebody had to win. What did you give back that makes you feel entitled? And this is like something that I definitely didn't express it that well in the first like year or so of Hearthstone, and I definitely made a lot of pro players pissed at me. But there's just this feeling of like entitlement where you say pro with air quotes because the definition of professional is someone that makes a living doing it, which most of these pros did not. A lot of pro players early on felt like, first of all, they would make their little clique of other pro players, and they would basically look down on streamers and content creators and be like, oh, we're better at these games. We deserve more exposure than them. And, after like 3 years of not making money, eventually that was like beaten into their head that like, yeah, it's not how the world works. You have to like give something. But I would basically go in on these people because it's sad that they like behave in a condescending way towards people that are actually working harder than them. It's not hard to play a game of Hearthstone. It's hard as hell to make hundreds of fucking hours of YouTube content a month like Trollden does.
Well, I mean, I think we are seeing this kind of movement towards that, right? I mean, a lot of these people that are a lot of people are streaming now. All these players are trying to stream and trying to do some videos and some guides. Mr. Yagut, you're a good example of somebody who isn't part of a team, right? Like you're kind of operating independently, doing your own streams and doing whatever guides or whatever on Reddit too, just with any new decks that you have. Why don't you talk about that? Just like what is your strategy, I guess, with this, or what is your views on being a successful player / streamer or whatever in our space?
Well, right now I'm trying to make my stream bigger. To be honest, when I started streaming, I just did it because I wanted to get invited to tournaments.
Okay, yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense. That makes sense.
Back then, it
Because I didn't really care so much about the stream. I just cared to get into the tournaments, and you can only do that if you're like a big streamer, if people know you, basically.
Because of the invitationals, right? Because people were wanting views from their events, so they'd only pick people that would generate views.
Dude, I can't even tell you how many times I got invited to tournaments and turned it down because people had no idea just how bad I was for this. Like, oh God, I can't.
We've all been there. We've all been there. I mean, it's
maybe
like Declan did the same thing too. So we've all done it. So you were streaming, but how about now? How about now? What do you think of streaming?
Right now, streaming is pretty fun. I'm still trying to get into tournaments, get the points for the regionals.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And hopefully I qualify this time.
Okay. So that line of thinking, like Ray, that line of thinking about like streaming just to get into tournaments, isn't that like backwards, right? I mean, shouldn't, I guess, streaming be almost more important than trying to get into these tournaments? Assuming that these tournament prize pools are just not huge, like the value from winning isn't enough.
Well, most tournaments, the vast majority of money being given away has 0 invites now. There's very few invite-only tournaments. You just hear about the invite-only tournaments because those are the ones people actually happen to watch. Most tournaments are done completely through open qualification, including BlizzCon championships, and so you get with open qualification, a bunch of random people every time, and that's great for them. They're making some money, they're involved, but these people didn't do it because of streaming. But yeah, in the first 6 months of Hearthstone was maybe the most frustrated I'd been with the esports scene, because it wasn't even the biggest streamers that got invited. It was the most networked StarCraft pros in fucking Hearthstone tournaments. And this was a time period where I wanted to play professionally and I wanted a chance in every tournament. And I just wanted like notoriety. I wanted to prove to people how good I was. Because back then the skill gap was massively higher between
it was very high
between good and great. And I wouldn't get invited to any of this shit because I didn't play StarCraft at like a tier 3 level 2 years ago.
What pros? I'm trying to think.
Forsen?
Did you watch any
Forsen and Show? You mean? And
no, there's a lot of them.
Strife Crow,
Strife's good.
Kiyuki and Monk. Where did you start, Chris?
No, I started at the very beginning, dude. I started at the very, very beginning.
You did. Yeah. But you started in StarCraft, I mean.
Oh, yeah, I started in
Rodan started in StarCraft, and Artosis.
Okay. So you're saying just generally just all the StarCraft personalities and players.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but they didn't like... It's not like there weren't Hearthstone people that wanted to play these things. It's like fucking click of StarCraft, but you're not going to tell me otherwise. That was the first 6 months of professional Hearthstone play. And anyway, we moved beyond that to individual streamers blowing up. So like my stream blew up, Trump's blew up, Crips blew up. Amaz was like phase 2. He was a bit later. But at that point, we were the guys getting a lot of invites, and it was mostly invite based because you'd have these third parties that want to throw a tournament.
Yep.
Sponsors want the most viewer numbers. People want to make the sponsors happy. They're the ones making the tournament happen. So to get the viewer numbers, you invite the big streamers. So that was like phase 2. And that's what Yagut's describing, I think, is like that time period where if you're a player that doesn't have a big stream, but you're a very good player, and that skill gap was still pretty high back then between the players that sucked and were great, like really good. Mm-hmm. Then it's like frustrating because you're not getting invited because you're not a big streamer. So like at that point, it doesn't make sense. And nowadays, it doesn't matter if you're a streamer. It doesn't matter if you're really good at the game. Your odds of getting into these like most relevant tournaments are absolutely tiny. it's not true for all tournaments. There's still a lot of invite-only tournaments, and a lot of
what are relevant tournaments? You know what I mean? Like, are you talking about, I mean, HCT is definitely as open as possible, just for you know, skill based or point based, whatever. So relevant meaning high money type of tournaments? Is that what you mean? Or
yeah, high money tournaments, tournaments that people watch. I mean, HCT is the only tournament series that has succeeded in breaking 50K viewers with mostly unknown players. Mm-hmm. Like the Blizzard event, you know, that's what Blizzard market
it's the main storyline, so it better, right? Okay.
Yeah. So honestly, I think it's succeeded in that regard, but yeah, it's. Okay. I forgot what I was talking about.
Yeah, that's okay. So yeah, good. Are you? Do you feel like you're making more money from your stream or from like tournament winnings and playing in that?
I was not invited to any tournaments. Just like
not be invited to tournaments?
8, 9.
Okay.
Maybe a bit more. So definitely from streaming.
Okay. God, that just blows my mind. You're not invited to tournaments. That
a lot
really
of it does
blows
come...
my mind because you're actually a decent number. I mean, like, viewership wise, you're not a small streamer at this point. So, I mean, you're mid tier at the very least, right? I mean, you get 1,000, 2,000 people watching on like normal days. So that kind of blows my mind, and especially the skill level at which you play the game too. Okay, that's crazy.
I agree that's unfair, and honestly, one of the reasons is like the whole going solo thing. Most streamers get tournament invites. Most of the streamers that aren't like whale streamers at five-digit view counts, they get invites through like team networking, sort of. So a lot of the tournaments that happen, they'll be like, okay, well, we'll give 2 spots to this team and 3 spots to this team and 1 spot to this team.
Yeah.
And then the team kind of picks the
player they want to send.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate.
That's another point I guess you could talk about, is like the value of a team to a player, right? Like, because there's the whole, okay, as a team owner, you know, this whole business sucks. But as a player, is it worth joining a team knowing full well that the percentage of sponsorship you're getting from what they're getting is probably smaller than if you went freelance? Yeah. But on the flip side, if your intent is to compete, then of course you're getting possibly a bit less exposure if you're kind of in the mid tier, right? So it's just a little bit of you're kind of giving up a portion of your independence by going for a team. But at the same time, if you really want to compete, maybe it's worth the advantages.
I kind of
teams aren't. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Sure.
I wouldn't say teams are this like, they don't open this gate to tournaments. It's like very, very few tournaments. Maybe once every 2 months there will be a tournament that has an invite structure like that. But yeah, it's not like teams are the only way to get into tournaments and you have to sacrifice a lot as a player. I guarantee you, it is entirely the opposite way. The teams in every single case are the ones getting fucked over in the scenario. Yeah. Because if the player goes solo, he doesn't have a sales team behind him. No matter what exposure you have, it's not like sponsors are just going to flock to you. If a sponsor wants to go to Hearthstone, he's going to go to like Crypt, Trump, Reynad, Amaz, Forsen first. They're not going to go to like smaller streamers. So most of the time, even smaller streamers or like pro players only get a very good deal because they're making actual money instead of no money, helping them. On top of that, they're getting exposure. So like you're actually getting paid, and most teams operate at a loss for that reason. So yeah, it's just, there's a bunch of factors of that too. It's kind of like a land grab. Everyone wants to sign players. So the market rate kind of goes up to more than these players are bringing in. So it's a lot of that too.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, again, that just surprises me. Like event organizers, I would, like if you don't know anything about the space, event organizers, of course, are just going to go and talk to teams, and then you have this situation where teams kind of, send whatever players, right? But if your event organizers know the space, they should know who's kind of on the rise or who are super popular. I mean, that's what's just
that's the ideal world.
To me.
That's an ideal world you're describing right there. But
okay, that just blows my mind. But anyway, so we got Nigel on here. We fixed the audio issues. Nigel, I want to welcome you to the show. You here?
Hey guys, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I'm here.
Yes, you are here.
Yes.
Woo! Well, so thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining us. So we definitely want to.
Thanks for having me.
We want to talk about the article that you wrote yesterday, or the rebuttal that you wrote to Shivek's article, and you made a few very strong statements in it. Mostly, again, just rebuting what Shivek was implying in his article. One of them was really about, I guess, we've talked a little bit about just the viability of being a player, and well, not just a player, but just being a no-name player, a player that only plays and just tries to become the best in Hearthstone and doesn't do any other content. And I think you were pretty much agreeing with everything that we've been saying, which was you got to do work, right? You can't just be good at the game and that's it. So from a journalist standpoint, writing about, I know you've written articles about, like a player having a big run in a big tournament or upsetting somebody in a tournament. What are your thoughts just generally on trying to get any kind of exposure, any kind of momentum going for any of these pieces that you write or any of the players that you write about?
I mean, it's a complex process breaking out as a player, right? Because if you want your story to be told, you have to make people care about you, right? When I talk about breaking out as a player and going back to the early days, I always give Tyson L as an example, right? Because he was the first player I actually profiled. I think it was the first profile article actually written about a Hearthstone player. So what happened to Tyson is he won a couple of Zoda Cups, which were open tournaments. Back then it was the big thing to win a couple of those because there was nothing else. And then he got invited to the King of the Hill, which was held by iHeartU. He won 7 or 8 in a row, something like this, like an unbelievable record. So this makes a guy like me, a journalist, a writer, care. So I go there, I do my magic, I publish an article, I tell his story, but this did not get Thijs incredibly famous, right? It's not like people read this article like, oh my god, Thijs is the next big thing, because people were still caring about the well streamers, as Reynad likes to call them, right? The Thijs did not get a fan base until much later. Like, he was on Meteor Makers then, even though he won DreamHack by the end of the year, it was not until he was getting hyped as the best player in Europe 2015 that people started paying attention. And really, Thijs' success as a Hearthstone player, as a name, became a product of him becoming going on Kingwin, and then combined with Lauder's managerial fervor, etc. It's a complex procedure. You need everything to fall into place. Basically, you have to be good. You have to be to have good management. You have to get a lot of invites, tournaments, which also comes, as Reynad pointed out, through good management and through team network, etc. So it's like being good and winning means jack shit. If it sounds unfair, I mean, I wrote it in the article basically with the same language. It really doesn't mean shit. Like, for example, I'll give you an example from not within esports. Like, if I look at my profession, like as a journalist, as a writer, writing something good doesn't make me a success story, right? I have to go and put it on Reddit. I have to hope people like it. I have to promote it on Twitter, Facebook. I have to tell people about it, right? It's like 20% of the writing is the actual writing. 80% is them promoting and polishing and editing and marketing, right? It's the same for when you're a Hearthstone pro or pro in any other esport. I don't want to make comparisons to normal esports because, as you guys pointed out, it's completely different. It's like whoever puts a sign of equality between esports and sports for these things is a complete idiot. Like, Hearthstone isn't even equal to the other esports, right? And it's also something I point out. The game functions in a completely different way, so you have to adapt to what the game demands, right? Again, it's not like pro gaming, as I put it, is not glorified playtime. You cannot just sit on your ass, play the game, win a couple of tournaments, and they're like, oh, where are my money? Well, your money are nowhere because you're not earning them, because this is what you need to do to earn these checks. And if you're not doing them, well, then you're going to be poor, and then you're going to be homeless. I mean, as like not on a team.
Okay, that's escalating, but I get the idea.
Yeah, definitely get. So let's talk about Tyson a little bit, because you this is like your very big example of somebody who's been good at the game, historically been good at the game, and he is kind of had success, with it.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to throw in something there that you didn't throw in, which was he started streaming at some point too.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah, of course.
He had thousands of people watching him stream during that time too.
Yeah.
How much of that actually had to do with Tice becoming more of a regular name? I mean, obviously the storyline of him winning consecutive, events, even like 3 or 4 at the end of last season, like in a row, 3 in a row, I think, of the last season. It definitely helps with making these storylines for somebody like Tice. But I just feel like streaming, it seems like a lot of this leads back to streaming. And
yeah, I mean, streaming and content creation, like he puts a ton of stuff on YouTube, like guides and just matches, like play some weird decks. So he gets his name through every possible channel, right? This is what you have to do. Like he's winning tournaments, streaming, making video content, getting invited to more tournaments, winning opens, etc., etc. Like he's exploring every single alley, which can bring him profit. Like this is what a hardworking pro gamer has to do to earn his living, right? If you're not doing all of this or trying to do most of this, you do not deserve to earn a paycheck at the end of the day. It's hard,
like everything else,
but that's job, man. Like if I'm doing half-assed work, my boss yells at me, I don't get paid, I'm losing breeders, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. So like I have to give my best and try explore all different alleys of profit to be able to pay my rent at the end of the month, right? So if you're not doing this, sorry, get out.
The one thing I want to mention there though is the time when Tice started mattering. At the time, his stream was still getting like 2 digits of viewers, like sub 100 most of the time. So the streaming like shows that he was doing everything important, which is great from his side. But the streaming isn't what made Tice take off, and it wasn't the fact that he won so many tournaments early on, which, as I mentioned earlier, that was a time when there's a bigger gap in skill level between the people that were good and not good. So you cannot replicate that in 2016. There's just too much information that's public. There's too many players at that level. You can't win 7 King of the Hills in a row against reasonable opponents. It's just not.
Anymore. Well, he did win 3 tournaments at the end of last year, which was that's pretty impressive.
Right. That was great. It was great. I'm not. Ty's one of the best players in the world for sure. What I'm going to say is the biggest reason that we know about him and can like talk about him, because I knew about him for a long time. I made him an offer when he was on My Insanity, but the team wouldn't sell at the time, the contract. Anyway, the reason he's known is Lothar. That was the biggest thing. Yeah. For those of you guys who don't know what Lothar basically brought together Taj, life coach, RDU, and I think, do they have Sifka now? I think they do.
No,
I think they were looking at it, but I don't know if it actually got the.
No, Sifka doesn't want to stream, so they won't. Yeah. They will never get it.
Right.
That was one of the big problems.
So why does that matter? Like, why is this guy that casts some tournaments the reason that I know Taj exists? And the reason is Lothar is super fucking good at networking. He's a really socially adjusted guy, very likable, and he's at all of these events for one reason or another, just networking with people. So every time a tournament happens, Lothar knows the organizer. The organizer knows Lothar, and when they're looking for people to fill out their Hearthstone tournament, they're going to consult him. He's one of the people they're going to consult.
Right.
And they're going to consult Frodan too. They'll consult me sometimes. And then Lothar says, well, hey, this G2 roster is pretty fucking good. These players are, legendary, not as legendary as Tempo Storm, but legendary nonetheless. And I'll fucking, invite them. And that's how they get into all these tournaments, and it snowballs. So having like proper management that's just at these events, like befriending organizers, is the way to do it. And it might sound like an outwardly unfair system because like, oh, then how can the no-name players get in? But it's like, their skill level is super, super similar to the level of like these unknown pros, and they just have a bigger following, and they've gone through all the work to get on a team. It's not like teams sign no-name players. You have to work hard to even get on a team in the first place. And at that point, it pays off in tournament invites. So that's what I want to say there. But yeah, as for the Nidra article, there is one part that really, really fucking upset me. As long as I liked most of the article and most of it made sense. Mm-hmm. This is like something that people didn't realize for over 2 years. But what it failed to acknowledge is that websites and just things like Gosu gamers in general are the biggest cause for so many people within the community claiming that Hearthstone is an RNG game. So what I mean by that is you have all these tournaments that have like a lot of invites, and then as soon as you have an open qualifier and there's thousands of people, obviously all these pros aren't just going to be the top 8, and Hearthstone's too random for that. But publications like Gosu Gamers and people in the community that are like, in their mind, fighting for the little guy, they start claiming like, oh, look, as long as it's not an invite system, all these fucking no-name players did better. Yeah, these pros don't deserve to be there. These no-name players are better. And that's just not fucking true. The skill level is similar, and Hearthstone is very random when you have that many participants of a similar skill level. So then what guys like me or other streamers or existing pro players have to do, like, why did we lose? Is this random player that came out of nowhere and happened to win this tournament, is he better than us? No, he's usually, like, he really isn't almost ever. And you have to say, like, Hearthstone's a random game. That's why I lost. So that's why we outwardly explain it like that. And that's the honest truth, because the next tournament is not like this no-name player wins again. It's never fucking happened. Aside from like the Taj thing, but you know what I mean? The point is that's the problem, right? Is people, every time a no-name player wins an open qualifier tournament, people in the community are like, this is why the pros don't deserve to be there. And then even though that player will be forgotten about in a week and never wins anything again, we have to make the defensive argument of Hearthstone's an RNG game, and then people respect the esport less.
Sure, but you have to understand, like, as publications, we have to follow the storylines. Like, we have to craft the storylines. When somebody unknown to the community wins a tournament, we have to make it sound like an upset. We cannot just write an article. It's like, oh well, everybody could have won it. It doesn't really matter, because then nobody would fucking read us. And then about the RNG, that's, I know why you guys are making these statements, and I agree, because I mean, this is the nature of the game. Literally, everybody can win, and I play the game a lot, so I'm familiar with how it works. But again, it's also not helping to for the game to be accepted as something serious, right? Because when you create a culture and proliferate a culture of just dismissing a game because, well, it's RNG, it's luck, it kind of hurts the integrity of the game, and people start taking it less serious. This is a point that the Wrath made on Twitter and has made it a couple of times in the past. Right. And I do stand behind him. Like, I know this is the truth. I know that people lose to RNG to like juggles and to whatever you can think of, but it's like, if you stop, or at least take it a bit down a notch to talking about RNG, people might start talking it a bit more seriously. I actually think it's a bit like beyond repair at this point, but because it's like 3 years too late.
Okay, so I mean, it's beyond repair. I mean, we are selling this whole thing, and Blizzard, including Blizzard to the highest degree, we're selling this thing as a competitive game, right?
Sure.
And so yes, there has to be some element of talking about people being better than another person, and it just not randomly happening. Even in poker to some degree, right? Like poker, it's accepted that there's obviously, I don't want to say randomness, but there's it's a probability percentage type of thing, right? Even when
I'm gonna stop you just really quickly, because I think what we have to do maybe as a community is, or at least as commentators or whatever it is, people who cover that kind of stuff, is acknowledge that if they were to make another best of 5 happen afterwards, assuming that you really believe that they're on equal skill level, then make sure that you don't mention too much of the variance, because if you just report results, then that's fine. You can create the narrative of the, but overall, it's not about, yes, he got top decked by Rock Battle Weapon on Doomhammer. That's what we saw. But effectively, if they were to replay that matchup like 100 times, would it be close to 50-50 or not? Because I think we only see a small portion of matches and games between two players, right? So whenever that's broadcast, we see the luck. Like, we have the story, the short-term narrative, and we hold on to that. Like, we fixate on that stuff without really acknowledging the bigger picture. And I think maybe that's a bit more difficult to
but then
writers. Like, how do you cover this while having it be exciting?
There's like a checkmate situation when it comes to to storytelling in Hearthstone, right? Because Hearthstone only makes sense when you look at large amounts of data, right? This is the only way you can narrate Hearthstone adequately, because I'm gonna use Ghost Ranking as an example, not because they're good or because they're flawless, but because they only get better when we add more data. Ghost Rankings in their first year was the biggest garbage produced in the Hearthstone community. I'm saying this is the person who produced it, right? So the rankings get better and better. Again, they will never be flawless, but they get better when we add more tournaments, more data, when